In today's video, we're taking a look at the future of Pierre-Luc Dubois in Winnipeg. Plus, we have the latest rumors circulating around the Chicago Blackhawks' upcoming rebuild this offseason. Plus, we have some signings, a suspension, some interesting injury updates from Vegas, as well as Washington and others. All that and more coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have a variety of NHL news and some trade talk for the offseason to talk about here today. We certainly have some interesting news, so let's dive right in and get started. First up, we have a suspension to discuss. Ryan Lomberg's been suspended for one game, and his head coach of the Panthers, Andrew Brunette, has been fined $10,000. This is because Lomberg was caught instigating a fight in the final 5 minutes of the game against the Tampa Bay Lightning. So certainly it's an automatic one-game suspension that comes with that. So NHL player safety didn't really have to review anything per se. The thing that I find interesting about this, I get that the rule is in place for that. So I have no issue with the Lomberg suspension, but considering what's in the CBA for players to be fined, this seems excessive on the coaches, considering what the players make compared to what coaches make. I mean, some coaches are compensated relatively well, but majority of the players make as much or more as the coaches. Some of the top coaches are making anywhere from $2 to $5 million. A lot of them are, the newer, less experienced coaches are making well under that. So, it just seems a little bit off compared to what players get fined, which is somewhere between $2,000 to $5,000. But anyways, it's in the rule book. It's kind of pretty black and white in that regard, and that's what it is. So Lomberg will miss a game. Not a big deal, especially where it's not a playoff game here as of yet. But those two Florida State rivals are, possibly heading for a playoff matchup. We'll see. Likely won't be in the first round, but if they're both successful in round one, we could have a rematch that we saw before in round two if things work out that way. We also had a fine for LA Kings forward Arthur Kaliev, who was fined $2,235 for cross-checking against the Anaheim Ducks as well. So again, that happened a couple of nights ago. So we also had Detroit signing a pretty important contract here. In their entry-level deal signed for Simon Edvinsson, who was their top pick in last year's 2021 NHL draft, which will begin next season. So the big rangy defenseman will come over from Sweden and make his NHL hopefully debut next year. I mean, I'm not sure if they'll end up having him on the NHL roster, or maybe he'll start at the American Hockey League level. We know Detroit, typically at least, likes to be patient with their prospects. So I don't see him being rushed, but of course he's got 1 year in after being drafted. So it's not like he's being completely rushed. Well, either way, the good news is he's signed and he's going to be in North America in their system, and he really does have a bright future ahead of him. He's really projected to be a fairly substantial prospect in their rebuild here as time goes on. Plus, we also have an interesting signing for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They've signed the top free agent college goalie, who obviously has been on the market for some time due to another situation he was dealing with. But Dryden McKay, Minnesota State, has finally found an NHL home, and that's going to be with the Maple Leafs organization. Of course, Dryden McKay was the Hobey Baker winner, of course, in college hockey, which is quite a distinction. But then he was also suspended for 6 months due to an illegal substance that they discovered when he was having a test as being part of Team USA for the Olympics. So he was faced with a 6-month suspension there. So obviously he'll be fine to participate in training camp. Now, this is only an American Hockey League contract. This is not a two-way deal, which I found very interesting. I thought it would be, given that he's a little bit older, a little bit more mature, gone through his college hockey days. I didn't expect him to necessarily be, NHL regular immediately, but at the same time, the fact that he's on an AHL only deal means you cannot be called up. But I think the strategy here might be for the Leafs be to kind of wait and see what happens with their goaltending in the offseason. Of course, there's some big question marks around that. They have some tough decisions to make. We know Jack Campbell's a pending UFA. Obviously, their playoffs and everything is going to have a big impact over what his payday is going to be. Are they going to re-sign him? Which I know right now that I'm sure that will be leaning towards signing him for sure. What the deal is, though, we don't know. I know they haven't been happy with Mrazek. That has not worked out. He still has a couple of years left on that contract they gave him last year. So they'd probably like to move on from that if they could. They might need a new backup for Campbell if he remains the starter. McKay could be an option, but I don't know. So I would think that depending on how things go, that contract could be upgraded and signed to an NHL deal so he could be call-up eligible sometime later, maybe throughout training camp or early next season. We'll see where it goes, but it gives them another very interesting goalie prospect to add to their goalie system, which a lot of their other younger goalies like Joseph Wall, Ian Scott have had a lot of injuries the last couple of years and haven't really developed to the point that they thought. I know Wall's certainly further ahead and could still be a part of the team's future, but some interesting decisions for the Leafs in that department this offseason. Now, when it comes to some injuries, we have a variety of them to talk about. We saw Alex Ovechkin in the game against the Leafs last night go awkwardly into the boards and had a shoulder injury. Right now, the Caps are calling him day-to-day. He was in alone against Leafs goalie Erik Källgren, and he kind of was going in for a deke, went to his backhand. As he went to his backhand, it looked like he was already starting to lose his balance a little bit, and then he tripped on the goalie stick and went into the boards. I know I've seen some people calling it a dirty play on the part of the Leaf goaltender, which I don't agree with at all. To me, based on Ovechkin's move that he was doing in the read from the goaltender, I think he was already sliding in that direction with his stick to kind of try to make the save, because he was expecting Ovi to go to the backhand and then go up. Which is clearly what he was intending to do. As he went to the backhand, the puck kind of came off his stick. It was sort of a poke check, but not quite the timing of it. And Ovi tripped on it and went awkwardly into the boards. But I think he was already kind of sort of going down. I don't know if it would have been as difficult or as hard into the boards. But either way, it didn't look good for Ovechkin to go off the ice and be down the way he was. You know he was in a lot of pain and discomfort because he's a warrior and it takes a lot to get him off the ice. So we'll see. Hopefully that doesn't impact things for the playoffs for him, because that would be a major blow if he either can't play or if it's going to impact what he's able to do out there for the Capitals. They're going to have a tough enough series as it is, likely being wildcard 2. I mean, they could maybe get the third spot in the Metro, but either way, they're going to have a very tough series, and to not have him at 100% would be pretty huge. A few other players we've heard of as being done for the season. A couple in Ottawa, which include Connor Brown and Colin White. Likely not going to play anymore this year. Brown for sure. White's likely done. And we don't know the exact details of what they're dealing with, but considering they only have 3 games left, I know Brown's already been out for a few games. And it's not looking like Shane Pinto is going to make it back to play this year, which I know a lot of Sens fans are hoping to see. I don't think we can completely rule out the fact that he won't, but he wasn't in practice today in a regular jersey, which is a positive sign. But Coach DJ Smith said he really couldn't say for sure that he would play this year, and it's still kind of possible that he won't. So we'll see where that goes. It'd be nice to get him in one game, but really if his shoulder needs the recovery time for him to be 100% and be back as stronger than ever next year, then that's the right thing to do. The Hawks announced that they're likely not going to be with Kirby Dach and Connor Murphy, likely done for the season as well. So we'll see where all that goes. Now, when it comes to the Robin Lehner injury controversy, is he having surgery, is he not having surgery? A lot of conflicting reports. The last time we talked about this, so we talked about the ESPN report suggesting that he was going to have surgery and be done for the year. Then Vegas denied that. Peter DeBoer, the head coach, said that as far as he knew, he was expecting to be at practice in a couple days, and he was expected to be at the game against the Sharks last night, which he was. So Elliot Friedman alluded to this a little bit more detail on Saturday night, and then more detail again on the latest 32 Thoughts podcast that came out earlier today. And essentially, it sounds like we know Robin Lehner is indeed dealing with injuries, and they very well will require surgery. Whether or not he does it now or in the offseason is something that's up for debate. There's 2 to 3 different things that he's believed to be dealing with a couple of them likely being serious. We know there's a knee, there's a shoulder, there's a lot going on with Robin Lehner. And apparently he wasn't real happy with the organization, and likely sounds like the head coach when it comes to being pulled against the Capitals not long ago in a 1-1 game. After one period of play, he was pulled for Logan Thompson, which he wasn't pleased with. Obviously, he took some flack from the coach in the post-game comments before that about, that they needed some big saves and that they weren't getting it, and kind of get called out a bit. So it seems to me like he just wasn't thrilled with how he was being treated. So he just told the team essentially, all right, I need surgery. I'm shutting her down. I'm done for the season. And of course, he probably had that information out. I'm not sure if he leaked it himself or how it got to ESPN, but either way, they get a hold of it. Once the story came out and it became talked about, then obviously the organization probably went into panic mode a little bit because they certainly need him right now, given their goaltending situation and where it's at, and trying to get into the playoffs. And they talked to him to try to smooth things over and see if they could work things out. And, right now, obviously, he's there. Will he play? I don't know. I mean, they had a bit of a heartbreaking loss last night, which is going to put a big dagger in their playoff hopes. The Sharks made it known before the game. I know Timo Meier made a statement saying that they were going to do everything they could to disrupt Vegas' playoff chance. They're a big rival, of course, and wanted to do what they could to derail that, and they did. Vegas had a 2-goal lead in the third period. The Sharks came back. Meier himself scored a game-tying goal with, I think it was less than a second left. The clock actually hit 0 right after the goal went in, but it did count. Goes to overtime, and then they got the game winner on a shootout from brand new rookie Thomas Bordeleau, who hasn't even officially scored his NHL goal yet, and that won't count as one because it's a shootout goal. But still, the Sharks really went in and played the spoiler in the comeback here, and that extra point for Vegas could be crucial. So that's not sounding good, but either way, you have to wonder what this does for the relationship between Lehner and the team moving forward. Certainly, during the Fleury controversy and how Fleury was kind of being overlooked for Lehner when he first got there, and Dufour seemed to favor Lehner at that point. Fleury was kind of getting shafted. I know his agent, Alan Walsh, wasn't happy about things. Then the way he got traded, and now things are going south with Lehner. I wouldn't be shocked at this point if Lehner might decide he doesn't want to be there. I don't know how this is going to go in the offseason, but a team like Vegas with such high expectations, and they're not used to dealing with adversity, and we know that the owner wants to win yesterday. So to me, I would not be surprised if they missed the playoffs. So right now it's looking like they will, that we see something significant when it comes to changes. And I honestly do wonder what the future of Lehner with the team. I'm not sure how things are going to be, when it's all said and done here and they have their exit meetings. Will he want to be back? I honestly don't know. Now, we also got the Masterton nominees announced here today as well. So how that works is each team has their own nominee. We'll determine later who the finalists are closer to the NHL awards. But for right now, just to give you an idea of who some of the names are, I'm not going to go through all 32 of them. I can certainly give you a link to the article from the Professional Hockey Writers Association who did the voting on this and to determine each team's nominee. But for example, you've got Tyler Seguin from Dallas, Carey Price from Montreal. I would suspect he'll be one of the finalists. You got Kevin Hayes in Philly. He's dealt with a lot this year. Brian Boyle in Pittsburgh. Anton Forsberg in Ottawa has bounced around a lot and finally persevered through that and had a strong year. You got Tarasenko in St. Louis after everything he's been through. Jaden Schwartz had a real tough season as well, so he's nominated in Seattle. Andre Kasha, of course, overcoming a lot of injuries to put together closer to a full season in Toronto. Of course, you got Jack Eichel in Vegas as well after the disc replacement surgery and everything he went through this year. Luke Schenn in Vancouver, Nick Backstrom in Washington, who had a major surgery and was delayed starting his season. Andrew Ladd in Arizona, who's gone through a lot, finally hit 1,000 games. And then Zdeno Chara is another one in the New York Islanders organization. At his age, that's definitely what you call perseverance and dedication to hockey as well. So hard to say who will be the finalists or who will win, but that's some of your nominees that we know going into that. Now, of course, onto the trade section of the video today. We know the Winnipeg Jets are a team that's likely going to be going through some significant changes of some sort. Freeman essentially talked about this a bit in the 32 Thoughts segment on Saturday night, but went into a lot more detail here on the podcast, which was out earlier today, and essentially saying he expects the organization to go through a major kind of review, if you will, from head to toe, not only of the players, but coaching, management, everything. We know they have an interim head coach in Dave Lowry. I would say he's probably not coming back, given how the team didn't have any great success under his time behind the bench. I mean, could he still be there as an assistant because he was already there? His son, obviously, Adam Lowry, is on the team. That doesn't really mean anything. Doesn't mean he has to be there. But I wouldn't rule out the fact that he could still be with them in some capacity. But I don't see him being the head coach next year. You have to wonder about Cheveldayoff. They have to basically think, have we done as much as we can? Have we gone as far as we can with this group? And how significant changes do we need to make? And Friedman points out he's been told that one of the main storylines to watch is Pierre-Luc Dubois. We know he's not far from free agency. He's got 2 more years before he hits UFA status. He's RFA with arb rights coming up here. And at the end of the day, the Jets need to decide, and it's believed they want to keep him in the fold and extend him long-term after how he's played for them and what they gave up to get him. And that if they can't get him signed long-term, essentially look for a potential reaction that might involve a trade. He didn't come out and say that he thinks they want to trade him. That's not the case at all. But they need to determine his future. The Jets certainly like to lock up their players long-term who they feel are going to be a big part of the solution, like we've seen them do in the past. Some of those long-term contracts are coming to an end, but they still have guys like Kyle Connor signed long-term. They've got Morrissey signed long-term. But then they've got Hellebuck, Scheifele, Wheeler all down to 2 years on their deals. And, he's going to have to ask the questions too, like, what is your plan? What are you going to do to make this team better? This year did not go as planned. They're going to have to sell him on why he should sign long-term, because he has more of the leverage right now, because he's only a couple years away from free agency. He could say, no, I want to do a 1 or 2 year deal. And if that's the case and he won't sign more than that, maybe they'll have to make a move that they don't really want to make. It's hard to say. So obviously, when it comes to PLD, we'll see what his future holds. Of course, they did touch on Mark Scheifele, saying that, he's another player that there are some question marks around his future, and they wonder if it's a situation where he could be moved too. So I certainly expect the Jets to go through a major, shift this summer with who's the main players on the roster, who's behind the bench, who's leading the team management-wise. It wouldn't be really all that shocking to see seismic change. Even if Cheveldayoff's back, there's going to be a new coach and at least a couple of significant moves on the roster to reshape the team. There's no doubt that that's likely going down. And I think a lot of us, they have some tough questions to look at. And PLD's contract status is going to play a big role in that as well. Now, the other thing I want to look at here is the Chicago Blackhawks and their rebuild. There's an Athletic article by Scott Powers speculating on the rebuild plans, looking at a lot of players who could be moved. Now, he's talked to some sources that say they might move on from RFA's Dominic Kubalik and Dylan Strome. I don't see a scenario where they don't qualify them, no. The article doesn't really specify how they move on from them, just that it's possible that they do. I would think they'd have some trade value. Strome especially, he's picked up his play, and he's got enough points that they wouldn't just let him walk. That would be ridiculously crazy in my opinion. But Kubalik and Strome are certainly players that you could find on the go. But he also had league sources that said to him that they would not be one bit surprised if the Blackhawks were shopping Alex DeBrincat and Patrick Kane. Of course, we know that Kane has the no-move clause, and I'm sure him and Jonathan Toews are going to be having extensive conversations with Kyle Davidson, along with their mutual agent, Pat Brisson, who represents both players, to see where the future holds and if there is a possibility of either moving. But according to the sources talking to Powers, it sounds like they really could have a significant seismic shift here in what this roster looks like. If the thing with DeBrincat is, you might say it's crazy to trade him. He's still pretty young, but it gets you a really solid return. I think teams would be willing to pay up for a 40 goal man like him, and Patrick Kane, with half of the salary retained at $5 million or so. That's an attractive contract too. Jonathan Toews would be a lot harder. Toews is going to be one of the tougher ones to do. But Kane, DeBrincat, Kubalik, and Strome, to me, could all be moved. I have no doubt there would be enough interest. And it's just going to be interesting to see just how much they tear things down here and start to rebuild. But this Athletic article from Scott Powers really makes it sound like there's a real shot here that it could be really deep and go right to the core of it. And this team could be really not planning to be very good next year. Now, one thing, though, that the article does talk about that could be a big influence on their decisions would be this year's 2022 draft lottery. We know they're in the lottery, and their first-round pick obviously goes to Columbus unless it's top 2 protected, and then it gets bumped a year to 2023. So if the Blackhawks get a top 2 pick this year, then they get to keep it, and they'll get themselves a pretty solid prospect. Now, they could still choose to give it up, but I don't think they would if it's a top 2 pick. That's too high and too risky, I think, from just about any team's perspective. So that would bump their first rounder next year going to Columbus. That's a big difference here. Now, but if they don't win the lottery, then that's going to be different again. But if they win the lottery and they get up to 1 or 2, they're not going to want next year's pick going to the Jackets to be super high and have it being a risk that they're going to give them first overall to get Connor Bedard. That could be a major turning point into how deep of a teardown we see, because the Blackhawks, if they know their first round pick is going to Columbus for 2023, they're not going to want to be the worst in the league and have that risk be over them all season long. Because obviously that's a major blow to their rebuild to not only not have the pick that's bad enough, but for them to do a teardown and planning to be bad and not have it just does not make sense. You would probably delay things a little bit and try to be competitive enough that it's at least not as low as that, right? Maybe they would kind of do a 1-year reshuffle and then go from there. I don't know, but I would think that would influence their plans. Now, fortunately for them, before we ever get to the offseason, they're going to know where they're picking, because May 10th is the draft lottery. If they don't have any luck and they end up in that, 7, 8, 9, 10 range of wherever they're going to be, depending on where the exact standings finish, then they'll give the pick to Columbus this year, and then they'll have next year, and they'll want to be bad. And not suggesting that they're absolutely going to tank, but they're going to want to be trying to win next year's draft lottery. Connor Bedard is one of the most exciting first overall picks that we're going to see in some time. He's stat wise, I'm not saying he's the same as Connor McDavid, but statistically speaking, he's putting up a lot of similar numbers and comparable in some ways in the OHL and stuff. So certainly, it's a situation where like I said, he's just really exciting, real high-end prospect that they're going to want to be in on if they can, and that could influence their decision. So let me know your thoughts on that down below in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to this channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. We'll keep you up to date with all the latest news, rumors, and analysis on all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.